Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Leadership Spotlight series. I have spent most of my career in marketing focused on demand generation and working with sales. The relationship between the two groups is the most powerful, complicated, and dynamic relationship, I believe, in the entire company. But thriving organizations realize everyone is in sales. But the secret sauce to growth is the synergy between sales and marketing. So I could not be more thrilled to welcome my partner in crime, Akamai's EVP and Global Head of Sales and Services, PJ. So welcome, PJ, to the series.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks for having me.
So PJ, why don't you and I talk about our favorite subject? Let's talk about the relationship between sales and marketing. In your opinion, what makes for a strong relationship between sales and marketing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think the obvious thing is that you really need to have a shared vision and common objectives between both organizations. If you don't have that, there's going to be misalignment. And I think, between our two organizations, I think the thing we do really well is we start from what are we trying to achieve as a business? And then how do we get there in the most efficient way? That can lead to sort of aligned objectives around revenue, productivity, how much business do we want to have come from existing customers? How much do we want to have from new customers? But there obviously needs to be a high degree of trust between the two organizations, and I think we have that. But starting with an aligned view of where we're going as a business, what are the objectives that we share, I think is really critical.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, starting with trust, having a shared vision, having joint KPIs, everything anchored around the customer. I mean, I agree that is absolutely the secret sauce. And I feel very grateful that you and I have that here at Akamai.
Agree. And I would say the other thing is it's really important for marketing to understand how sales is measured and compensated. And we need to understand how marketing is being measured and compensated. I think those two things are really important. And I think that's one of the things that our organization does really well is we understand what's motivating the sales force. We understand what's motivating marketing. And those two things together, are really designed to allow us to achieve, the targets and the operating plan that we put together in the beginning of the year.
I couldn't agree more. I always say comp drives behavior. And like the biggest killer of any good marketing is to not be aligned with sales compensation. I guarantee your marketing will fail if what you're doing isn't aligned to how sales is going to drive revenues. Another question for you. What does marketing and sales alignment success look like to you?
You and I have talked about this for a long, long time, but I really
Yeah.
think the best validation of marketing's value to the sales organization is when reps provide real world examples of where marketing contributed to, a sale or an outcome that we had with a specific customer. I've gotten a lot of great feedback from our teams. I can think of one recent one where our head of FinServe, came to me and said, we wouldn't have gotten these deals, these high value security deals in the financial services vertical without marketing's contribution. They helped to identify the opportunity. They helped to nurture it. When it landed with the sales rep, it was well qualified. We knew who we were talking to, what we were talking about. That's what, I love about the way we work together with your team is, we do find new cross-sell opportunities together. We make sure that we're getting qualified leads. If we're not, we recalibrate and make sure that we refine, how we're getting those top of the funnel type leads to get, distributed down to the sales force. So I think it really starts with, what's happening in the real world, not what is in front of the computer on a dashboard and what the numbers say. But to me, what the sales reps communicate back in terms of the value of marketing is really, really important.
I love that. And I couldn't agree more. One of my favorite emails in any given day is when somebody's celebrating the partnership between our teams, because that's when the 1+1 =3. And I agree. No one wants to see marketing flash up numbers that we hit if sales isn't happy. That's the perfect way to end a great relationship. And so I think you're right. Aligned goals. So we're all looking at the same number. And then just true appreciation of the art that each of us brings in service to the customer is second to none.
Yeah, I mean, I would add like a 1B for me is when we have your marketing team, really in the boat with us and getting real-time customer feedback together. I think one of the things that some marketing organizations don't do well, they're not out in front of customers. They're not spending time really trying to understand with the sales force, what are the customers saying? What do they like about our products? What do they want to see us do differently? What's working, what's not? So the participation of marketing, in, sales cycles and, being on calls with us, I think is really important because it allows marketing to really understand what are we hearing from customers.
That's gold. And it's gold for marketers, right? Because you put these messages in market and these go to markets, and if they're not landing and resonating with the customer, we fail. So any opportunity we have to hear that and partner with sales and bring our different perspectives, I think is 100% invaluable. What advice do you give your sales teams on how to work with marketing?
My advice to the sales team is to constantly ask ourselves how we can enable our customers to be more successful. I've seen a lot of sales reps put together presentations that they want to put in front of customers, and one of the first things I do is ask that particular sales rep, is this aligned with what the customer wants to hear in this session, in this presentation? I think too often, we're too inwardly focused on what's important to Akamai or what's important to our business and not focused enough on what's really important to the customers. I think we exist to make our customers more successful. They're buying our capabilities because it's going to help them, accelerate something or secure something or make their business more efficient or better or faster growing. So I always start with how do we enable our customers to be more successful? If you start there, then everything sort of takes care of itself. The other thing is being good listeners. I always say that the best salespeople are the ones that are the best listeners. The same goes for, I think, marketers as well. Really starting from the customer standpoint, what's going to make them more successful, and then really listening to that feedback, understanding their business better, and then coming back to them with a pitch that says, here's how we can help you be more successful. I think it's important. There's one other thing that I would say. There's a quote that I really like that sort of shaped my behavior for the long time that I've been at Akamai. And the quote says this, that, leaders are people who do the right things and managers are people who do things right. And there is a profound difference. And that becomes somewhat of your North Star in terms of just how you manage yourself and the people underneath you. I think that's really good advice and a good quote to remember.
Can you give us an example of a time when sales and marketing worked together to accomplish something great?
The head of our FinServ vertical sent me an email. And this is what he said. He said, marketing has done an incredible job providing amazing air cover that we all crave every day. And often that air cover is missed in our day-to-day interactions. I want you to understand that these deals wouldn't have come together unless we had the tight-knit collaboration that we have with the marketing team. And so that means to me that, from opportunity identification, to understanding what the customer's needs were, to helping us put together a plan for how we would represent our capabilities in front of that customer, marketing was in the boat with us and right next to us. And that really led to a super successful outcome with not just one customer, but, several in the financial services vertical.
That's great. You know what I love about that story and example is it's from the trenches. A lot of times we focus on the big shiny object, right? The big event, the big thing. And this is really about a moment of greatness in the everyday, focus on how two teams are working together in service to the customer, using data, using relationships to do great things. That's such a good story. I like to say sales and marketing should have a healthy tension between the two teams. Do you agree?
Yes, 100%. And I would say the thing that we do really well together, and it's one of the reasons why I really enjoy working with you, is we hold each other accountable. But we challenge each other and we educate each other and we sort of cut through the noise and really try to figure out, what are the things that are going to make our customers more successful. And then if we start there and then we figure out, all right, well, what are the things that we need to do, to help enable that, from a marketing and sales standpoint, that usually leads to really positive outcomes for the customers. But I think really understanding what's working and what's not, being realistic about where we need to change things and not being afraid, to change things on the fly when we know it's going to lead to better outcomes is really important. So I just think that directness is really important. And it's great to track the metrics of the business, both on the sales side and the marketing side. That's super important. But we also need to be really cognizant of where things can be improved and where we can be more efficient. And that's a continual improvement thing. You just can't set a plan and say this is what it's going to be, and we're not going to adapt or evolve it. So I think the way we've sort of evolved our plans together and stop doing things that weren't working well and continue to do more of what was working well, I think that's been, a really positive development in the sort of marketing and sales organizations in Akamai.
I agree. It's unemotional. It's in service to the customer. Just put the issue on the table and let's just solve it. And there's no drama, and we come at it from different ways. But I feel like when we do have a challenge, it leads to a better outcome, right?
Right.
Because it causes us to strategize and think bigger and different. So I agree. I think that healthy tension leads to better outcomes. So
Agreed.
I'm glad we have it, but most of the time we don't. Spoiler alert to everybody listening. All right. I'm going to wrap with something fun so the teams can get to know you just a little bit better. So, what was the best business advice you have ever received?
I think I referred to it earlier in this session, but very early on in my sales career, I had a mentor that said to me, "Don't ever forget that the best salespeople are the best listeners." And I've always had that in the back of my mind, and I think it's allowed Akamai to be successful. It's really helped me be just more productive on the sales side, both when I was an individual contributor, a manager, and gradually bigger leadership positions in the company. But I really feel like the folks that listen the best to what the customers are actually saying are the ones that end up being some of our most effective sellers, and that actually probably cuts across every functional group. It's one thing to be a good presenter and be able to represent our capabilities in front of a customer, but really understanding and listening to what customers need, want, what their business challenges are, and then taking that feedback and then mapping it to a solution that can really help them, I think is the most important.
I love that. Listen first and speak second. Definitely words of wisdom. So I know our listeners will really appreciate that advice. Well, PJ, I have to tell you, as always, it was an absolute pleasure chatting with you this morning. I want to thank you for spending time with me, and I look forward to our next chat together.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks for having me.